Alright, Dobry Yutra Toberishi. Time for another video. We're going to try a Gary and Mendham imitation here. Cheap imitation, I guess. Our subject today is Israel and the United States. A subject is ticklish as a bulldog's testicles, but we're going to attempt it anyway. Okay. My subject here is an advertisement in the December 20th, 2010 issue of The Nation. A progressive magazine in its own right. I'm sure no one has a problem with it. And in this paid advertisement is published by Flame, a tax-exempt nonprofit educational organization whose acronym stands for Facts and Logic About the Middle East. Its mission is, quote, the research and publication of the facts regarding developments in the Middle East and exposing false propaganda that might harm the interests of the United States and its allies in that area of the world. And it goes on to list your tax-deductible contributions are welcome, of course. The main purpose of this advertisement is that you deserve a factual look at Israel and the United States. Is Israel an asset or a burden to our country? The United States, it says, is without question Israel's most important ally. No questions there at all. And also, without question, Israel is the staunchest and most reliable friend of the United States. Well, I think a few Israelis in federal prison on espionage charges might cast doubts on that, but we'll overlook that. To continue, there are some who believe and vigorously advocate that Israel is a burden to the United States, and that, were it not for Israel, peace would break out and flower in the Middle East. Well, goes on to list here what are the facts, because supposedly the facts contradict all of these assertions. Goes on to deny that there's an Israel lobby. Some sort of satanic protocols of Zion conspiracy that we need to overlook. And as it says, the real truth here is that Israel is indeed a major recipient of U.S. aid, and nearly $3 billion of it, all of it in military assistance, nothing in economic aid. 75% of this military aid must be spent with U.S. military contractors, making Israel a very large customer of those companies indeed. Well, of course, and by saying so, you've undercut your whole argument as to the influence of an Israeli lobby, because, of course, with this much money going into the coffers of U.S. contractors, it's obvious that Israel's voice is to be heard in the U.S. Congress, which always listens to people with money. Does this disprove an Israeli lobby? Well, what it shows is that, like all lobbies in the United States, it only has the influence the U.S. government wants it to have. And if there's money to be made by the U.S. military-industrial establishment, obviously the Israeli lobby will be listened to keep that profit going. So it goes on to say here, America's staunchest ally. A good case can be made that aid to Israel, all of it military, mind you, should be part of the United States defense budget. Well, you know, you want to extend that a little further. You can say Israel should be made of the 51st state of the U.S. That would create a lot of savings in the defense budget all around. But of course, it's not profitable to contractors to subsidize U.S.-based industry. It's much more profitable to have it done abroad, much more cheaply. Okay, virtually without exception, Israel's government and its people agree with and support the foreign policy, their objectives of the United States. Well, of course so, because the United States foreign policy is a clone of Israel's, thanks largely to this military-industrial nexus we have going here. So obviously they would. And if you're giving me hundreds of millions of dollars a day, obviously my views and yours are going to be kind of close. Okay. The Arabs and other Muslim countries, virtually all of them recipients of American largesse, almost reflexively vote against the United States in most instances. Well, of course, because if U.S. and Israel policy is that close, and they're allied against Arabic Islamofascism, well, obviously they're not going to see U.S. friends either, are they? Goes on here with Israel as the major strategic assets of the United States in an area of the world that is the cradle of Islamofascism. Well, okay, which is dominated by tyrants and permeated by religious obscurantism and shows almost total disregard for human rights. Well, that means that the death squads and dictators in Latin America that Israel was helping to finance obviously being the backbone of Christian civilization and have nothing to do with Islam, they are acceptable. Okay, they're obviously paragons of human rights that deserve as much aid as Israel cares to give, along with the United States. So there's no question there that Israel is doing its part to uphold Western democratic values. And during the decades-long Cold War, Israel is America's indispensable rampart against the inroads of the Soviet Union. Okay, it's now the bulwark against the aggressive intention of Iran. Okay, we're comparing Iran to the Soviet Union. Well, the last I knew, Iran had not invaded any of its neighbors, unlike Israel. And as far as the Iraq-Iran war goes, to my recollection, it was Iraq, Saddam Hussein specifically, that started that. So again, I don't see the external military influence of Iran as being a primary factor in anything in the Middle East. Ideological influence might be one thing. Putting missiles perhaps on its own soil is another, but that's not the same as crossing an international border and wreaking havoc in your neighbor's backyard. Okay, goes on to quote a general of the U.S. Air Force, outlining the savings that Israel provides to the Defense Department and research and development, and weapon systems development, cost of having troops on the ground at this on the score of $5 billion a year. Okay, well, once again, you could have greater savings if Israel were just made a part of the United States or perhaps of NATO itself. Well, it goes on to say right here that Israel effectively secures NATO's southeastern flank. In that case, why indeed not make Israel part of NATO? Would that simply compromise Israel's military independence? Well, of course, but it would also compromise that lucrative defense contract business, wouldn't it? So, for that reason, Israel is not a part of NATO. And of course, it seems that Turkey apparently plays no role in guarding the southeastern flank. Greece, none of those places that are actually NATO members. We can just ignore them altogether. Its superb harbor, its outstanding military installations, the air and sea lift capabilities, and the trained manpower to maintain sophisticated equipment are readily at hand in Israel. Well, what are we reading? A real estate brochure here? It is the only country that makes itself available to the United States in any contingency. Yes, I guess so. If you paid me millions of dollars a day, billions a year, to be on 24-hour call, I'm damn sure going to have that phone right next to my side, aren't I? Yes, sir. Yes, Israel is not a burden, but a tremendous asset to the United States. Okay. Anyway, it goes on here that Israel is indeed America's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East and the indispensable defender of America's interest in that area of the world. Of course, that means America and Israel's interests are identical. Okay? The people of the United States, individually and through their congressional representatives, overwhelmingly support Israel in its seemingly unending fight against Arab aggression and Muslim terror. Well, obviously not. Otherwise, there would not be such widespread belief in an Israeli lobby that this advertisement seeks to counter. So obviously, there must be some unbelievers out there who must be taken to task. Goes on here. Oh, Arab aggression. Arab aggression and Muslim terror. Well, what constitutes Arab aggression? If you're sending in the cavalry to relieve a fort surrounded by Indians, the root question of why the fort is there and why the Indians feel aggrieved enough to attack it, I guess, is something you're obviously not supposed to ask. But this support, of course, isn't based on the great strategic value that Israel represents. It is and always has been based on shared values of liberty, democracy, and human rights. Well, if your idea of liberty, democracy, and human rights is dropping cluster bombs and napalm on third world off-color folks that can't fight back, yes, I guess that is a shared value. America and Israel are aligned by their shared love of peace and democracy. Well, okay. If you can call unilateral invasions of, say, Lebanon or South Vietnam spreading peace and democracy, you're on target. Israel and the United States stand together in their fight against Islamo-fascist terrorism and always have stood together in their promoting of right-wing Christian death squads in Central America. So once again, their values are right again parallel. These shared values, these common ideals will bind Israel and the United States forever. Yeah, and I guess that defense contract isn't going to expire anytime soon either, is it? Anyway, This is my take on this ad, and it's very one-dimensional development of Israel and U.S. alliance. And this is not to say that Israel doesn't have its own point of view, but hark, there's a knock at the phone. Hello? Who? Mo? I don't know no Mo. You're upset at my latest video? Well, I haven't even uploaded it yet. It makes you sad. Mo's sad.